Hello and welcome to India Business Hour. I'm Shireen Bhan. The headlines we're tracking for you tonight. A blockbuster Friday rally on Dalal Street. The sensex up 1,300 points. Nifty gains nearly 400, wiping out all the losses this week. Despite the rally, nearly 50% of the Nifty stocks end the week in the red. Nifty 50 companies report a combined profit growth of 4% in Q1, the lowest since the pandemic. Data from Motilal Oswal shows 107 companies tracked by the brokerage have seen an earnings downgrade for FY25, while 46 have seen upgrades. The US government cuts prices of 10 patented prescription drugs used by the Federal Health Insurance Scheme by up to 79%. The move will impact Indian pharma companies eventually. The Reserve Bank tightens norms for NBFC peer-to-peer lending platforms, directs them not to provide any credit enhancement or guarantee facility. The central bank also rules that the aggregate exposure of a lender to all borrowers must not exceed 50 lakh rupees. Doctors across India protest the rape and murder of a 31-year-old trainee doctor at a Kolkata hospital. The Calcutta High Court slams the TMC government after vandalism inside the hospital premises on the night of the 14th of August. The centre directs heads of government hospitals to file institutional FIRs within 6 hours of any incident of violence. The Election Commission announces dates for assembly elections in Jammu and Kashmir and Haryana. Voting to take place for 90 seats in J&K across 3 phases, with the first phase on the 18th of September. All 90 seats in Haryana to vote in a single phase on the 1st of October. Results to be announced on the 4th of October. A CNBC-TV18 exclusive. Complaints over the food served in trains surged 500% in FY24, reveals RTI data from IRCTC. In the last 3 years, nearly 13,000 people complained about the food, but only 3 contractors were punished. That's an exclusive. The interim head of the Bangladesh government, Mohammad Yunus, dials Prime Minister Modi, assures safety of Hindus and minorities. India reiterates support for a democratic and stable Bangladesh. Student protesters who led the movement against Sheikh Hasina decide to form a political party and fight elections. The death toll in Palestine due to Israeli strikes crosses 40,000, according to Hamas-run Gaza Health Ministry. Israel issues fresh evacuation orders for parts of Khan Yunis, further squeezing the displaced population. Israeli settlers attack West Bank, killing 1 person and injuring dozens. Ukrainian troops advance inside Russia and claim to be in control of a border town with crucial energy infrastructure. Russia claims NATO and Western countries planned the attack on the Kursk region and vows to hit back. Well, we'll come to all of that and more in just a bit, but let's start with the market action for the day. It turned out to be a blockbuster rally on Friday, which pretty much wiped out all of the weekly losses, helping the sensex and the Nifty end in the green. And look at how strong they closed. The Nifty up 400 points, the sensex up 1330. The mid-cap index, 1,000-point gain there, and the Nifty bank up almost 800 points. So across the board, sectoral performance there. The Nifty gained on account of that late surge that we saw coming in this afternoon. Now, even if you look at the story as far as the week is concerned, both the sensex and the Nifty have ended with gains of 1% this week. IT, real estate and auto were among the sectoral star performers, with the indices surging between 2 to 3%. Investor wealth has swelled by over 7 lakh crore rupees in just today's session. So what's aiding the India story? Domestic institutional investors have bought equities worth close to 3 lakh crore rupees so far this year. Speaking to me earlier, the CNBC-TV18 Town Hall, global investor and author Ruchir Sharma said that it was the domestic investors that are fueling the Indian equity market story. He calls India the last bull market standing in the world today.
There really has been no bull market in the world this decade like India. This is a unique bull market unto itself, because also of the breadth of it.
Yeah.
Like in the US, you've had a bull market
largely driven by tech.
Concentrated by tech and a few companies at the top. In India's case, it's been extremely broad, like in terms of what's happened. You know, there are various sectors that have, virtually every sector has participated in this bull market. So it's a very unique bull market that we have seen in India. It's the like only bull market in the world, I would say today, literally, the true bull market.
Well, that's as far as the markets are concerned, but let's talk about the micros. Now, the Q1 earnings season is drawn to a close and it has been a slow start to the new financial year. Now, if you take a look at the Nifty 50 companies, they have reported a combined profit growth of 4%, which is the lowest that we've seen since the pandemic. According to Motilal Oswal, 5 Nifty companies, including HDFC Bank, Tata Motors, ICICI Bank, Maruti Suzuki and TCS have contributed to the most incremental accretion in earnings in Q1. Now, companies like BPCL, JSW Steel, ONGC, Reliance Industries and Grasim have contributed adversely within the Motilal Oswal universe. 43% of the companies tracked by the brokerages have missed expectations, while 29% have reported a beat on profits. Among the companies covered by the brokerage, 107 companies have seen an EPS downgrade for this financial year, while only 46 companies have seen their earnings per share being upgraded for FY25. So that's a sobering thought there. And this earnings trend is similar for public sector companies as well. Nimesh is standing by with the details. Nimesh.
In fact, FY25 has not started on a strong footing. In fact, the hits and the misses were more in favor of misses than in terms of hits. I was looking at the Motilal report today, and they said, for FY25, there are only 64 companies where there's been an earnings upgrade of more than 3%. On the other side, there are more than 108 companies where there's been an earning downgrades of more than 3%. So, in that sense, it was not so great. I just want to add a bit on the PSUs. It's been a mixed bag for the PSUs. I'm largely saying this because there has been so much of retail interest. I thought I'll just put some data in terms of how the PSUs have done in quarter one. First, the big misses of quarter one in terms of the PSU basket. Midani was a big underperformer in this quarter. The EBITDA margins are down 780 basis points. That's the kind of miss we've seen there. All the 3 OMCs have also seen a big miss in terms of EBITDA. But here I'll put in a caveat that they've all taken a hit because of the LPG subsidy, which might get reversed in the second half of this year. So not much to read into that. But RVNL, Bharat Dynamics, Railtel, BML, all have seen a bit of a mixed bag in terms of earnings. Only Railtel was a bit of an outlier as far as the EBITDA margins are concerned. Having said that, there were some outperformers as well, who've done well. Cochin Shipyard was a classic example. The EBITDA margins are up 600 basis points. So was the case with Mazgaon Dock as well. They've done relatively better in this quarter. So was HAL Hindustan Aeronautics, which was not a big disappointment. It was actually in line to slightly positive as well. But if you look at this kind of PSU stocks, on an average, where the misses have been quite higher, all the stocks have shaved off between 15 to 25% from the recent peaks. But if you look at the valuation picture, it's still very, very expensive. Look at Bharat Dynamics. It's still trading at almost 40 times, whereas the 5-year average is nearly 30-odd times. Cochin Shipyard is at 48 times even now, whereas the average has been just 14, 15 times.
Well, that's the story as far as PSUs are concerned. Nimesh, many thanks. Now, shares of Hindustan Zinc declining in trade, down over 8% today. This after its parent Vedanta launched an offer for sale at a discount of 15%. Vedanta is looking to offload over 13 crore shares worth 6,500 crore rupees, which is more than what was planned earlier. Hindustan Zinc's board will meet on the 20th of August to mull a second interim dividend for the year. The Delhi High Court has agreed to hear SpiceJet's plea challenging in order to ground and return 3 engines to its lessors. However, the court has declined to hear the matter immediately. Now, this comes after the High Court directed the airline to ground the engines by the 16th of August and return them to the lessors within the stipulated time. The court said the lessors were suffering irreparable losses due to SpiceJet's continued use of engines, and this is a challenge for SpiceJet because it is already dealing with a significantly reduced fleet. Now, the United States government has mandated price reductions on 10 popular prescription drugs covered by Medicare. The price cuts, which range between 38 and 79%, will take effect in 2026. Ekta joins us now with the significance of the decision and, more importantly, the potential impact on Indian companies. Ekta, what does this mean for Indian generic companies and how soon is this likely to impact them?
Well, I'll start with the news first. The US government has reduced prices for 10 prescription drugs under Medicare, which is mandated by the IRA, which is the Inflation Reduction Act. Now, the list prices for all but one of these 10 medicines have been reduced by at least 50%. So, important drugs such as, say, Entresto by Novo Nordisk, which is an important heart failure drug by them, has been slashed in terms of the list price by around 53% by the US government. under Medicare. Now, Medicare is one of the channels which are available to sell US drugs. For example, Medicare, which is a type of government insurance, is around 18% of US drug sales. Medicaid is another 18% of US drug sales. Other channels include commercial channels through which the drugs are sold as well. Now, what is the impact on Indian companies? Basically, we are one of the largest suppliers of generic drugs into the US. Now, the price revision of these particular 10 drugs is limited to patented drugs. That means that these drugs are already being sold under a patent and there's no generic competition in it right now. Indian generic companies will only begin selling their version of the drug once the patent expires. So as of now, there's a patent, there's no generic company which is entering the market. What has changed then is the potential market size of the generic drug. For example, Entresto. Just to illustrate this better, the drug price is slashed to $295 versus $628. So the potential starting point of a generic drug entering the market would then be $295 versus $628. But it's important to note that generic companies in any case sell their drugs at lower prices. So there's stiff price competition when genericization takes place in the market. And separately, the price cut is only limited to Medicare at this point in time. It's not to Medicaid and other channels as well. So one has to really assess that on a larger scale. I spoke to a lot of people within the industry, within the analyst community, and they're not perturbed by this news as of now.
All right, Ekta, many thanks for joining us. Now, shares of Ola Electric up 20% in trade today, hitting an upper circuit for the third time since its listing on the 9th of August. And this comes after the revenue for the company jumped by 32% on a year-on-year basis in Q1. The stock has gained 75% against its issue price in 5 trading sessions. Electric two-wheeler manufacturer Ather Energy has achieved the unicorn status after securing 600 crore rupees of fresh capital. The latest round of funding, which was led by the National Investment and Infrastructure Fund, the NIIF, has taken the company's valuation to $1.3 billion. Ather is now the 4th Indian company to turn unicorn in 2024. Foxconn CEO Young Liu met leader of the opposition Rahul Gandhi after he had met with Prime Minister Narendra Modi. He had met the Prime Minister on Wednesday to speak about the potential investment opportunities in India. The meeting focused on artificial intelligence, semiconductor manufacturing and boosting local electronic production. He's also expected to visit Tamil Nadu tomorrow to inaugurate an industrial housing hub. JSW Cement has filed draft papers with the market regulator SEBI to raise 4,000 crore rupees via an IPO. The issue will comprise a fresh issue of 2,000 crore rupees. Meanwhile, existing shareholders will sell shares worth up to 2,000 crore rupees. So that's the next listing lined up, JSW Cement. The Reserve Bank of India has observed that some NBFC and peer-to-peer lending platforms have adopted practices that violate its directives and has now decided to tighten the rules. Ritu standing by with more details. Ritu, take us through the new rules as well as the implications.
Well, Shireen, to begin with, P2P players, which essentially match a lender to a borrower on a platform, and they're just the platform that do that, have been in India since 2014, but the guidelines for regulating these came out in 2017. And since then, there has been no updates to the regulations, because of which, certain models have evolved in a way where the regulator was not comfortable, or, there were clarity that was required, because of which certain loopholes were being exploited, so to speak, by some of the players. And now you have the Reserve Bank of India, after talking about this in public, in various speeches and various forums several times, coming out with tighter regulations to ensure that, P2P players are adhering to the guidelines and not, in summary, taking on any credit risk, which should essentially rest with a regulated entity like a bank or an NBFC. What RBI has essentially said, that NBFC P2Ps cannot provide or arrange any credit enhancement or any credit guarantee. That is not their function. They cannot take on any credit risk, and that is to say that any loss on interest or principal or both has to be borne by the lenders, and these platforms cannot take on any risk. Thirdly, they can't cross-sell any products which are, except for specific products that have been listed out by the Reserve Bank of India, and their aggregate exposure of a lender to all borrowers across all P2P platforms cannot exceed 50 lakh rupees. This was, again, something that RBI had said earlier, but now it is reiterated in light of, certain players flouting this rules. Apart from this, RBI has also said that there can't be any loan which will be dispersed by the platform unless it is as per a board-approved policy. And the fund transfer that happens when you match a lender to a borrower also has to go through an escrow account, and that will be maintained by a bank-promoted trustee, again, not the platform. So, delinking the two very clearly, laying the responsibility on the regulated entity, as we've seen in the past, and tightening the rules, really. And we spoke to some of the P2P players, just before this, and, broadly the sense is it will affect some part of the business, but life doesn't change because RBI has been bilaterally communicating these changes to various P2P players wherever it has seen these issues, and they're already in the process of aligning themselves with these revised regulations.
All right, Ritu, many thanks for joining us. The big story that we continue to track: protests across India after the rape and murder of a 31-year-old trainee doctor at Kolkata's RJ Kar Hospital, which took place last week. Now, the parents of the victim have told the CBI they suspect that several interns and physicians from the institutions were involved in the crime. Protests in Kolkata gaining momentum after the medical facility was vandalized on the night of the 14th of August. Junior doctors and medical students demand the deployment of central forces at the hospital. The centre has directed that the heads of government hospitals file institutional FIRs within 6 hours of any incident of violence. The Calcutta High Court has come down on the state government over the vandalism inside the hospital. It's referred to it as an absolute failure of the state machinery. Our team of reporters captured the protests from across India.
Any investigation authority can take over all this kind of hooligan attack, vandalism has been occurred. But we, the protester, we say the one thing: anyone can hand it over, but the truth should be published. No suppressing of the fact. We not want that.
हमको लगता है एक प्री प्लान अटैक था, प्री प्लान अटैक। जैसे एक 5,000 के ऊपर गुंडा जो आया था उधर से, पूरा ब्रिज भर गया था। वी वांट जस्टिस बोल के इमरजेंसी को तो पहले हम लोग का ये मंच को तोड़ा, उसके बाद इमरजेंसी में गया, अब तो 3rd फ्लोर तक चला गया था जहाँ IIT बिल्डिंग है, उसके ऊपर ही था सेमिनार रूम। तो हम लोग का ये लगता है, सस्पिशन है, उसका इंटेंशन भी था ये क्राइम सीन को डिस्ट्रॉय करना।
We want justice! We want justice! जब तक सुरक्षा नहीं, तब तक सेवा नहीं, CBA लागू करा।
In Mumbai as well, over the last 3 to 4 days, there have been protests that have been held outside various hospitals as well. In fact, when you speak of the protests that's being held right here, this is a protest at Azad Maidan where several doctors, resident doctors, in fact, many doctors, they've all gathered to express protest against what happened at Kolkata. In fact, you see them holding some of these posters which say "No safety, no duty." As of now, when you speak of the protest, the emergency services continue in various hospitals, but apart from that, other services have been suspended across the entire city, which is where we see some of these protesters who gathered here. In fact, we try and speak to some of them. Ma'am, you all are holding protests here. What is it, that you all are in fact speaking? What is the demands that are being put forward?
So my demand as a person is the crime has been covered completely. The body was cremated in a rush. Post-mortem was not reviewed. The site was destroyed. Vandalism was allowed. Burial of evidence. That means all that we shout, if tomorrow they say there's no evidence, there'll be no justice. The police who covered it, the people who covered it should lose their jobs permanently. Otherwise, there's going to be no change in attitude.
What exactly are your demands right now, and how are the hospital services affected?
So this has been happening time and again to the doctors all over the country. It is not limited to a state, a country. It is limited, it's all over the world. But at least we want protection in our country for all the healthcare providers, not just doctors. The incident that happened was the safest place that can be for a doctor. But still, it happened that the rape and murder happened. So usually earlier we have protested a lot of times for someone beating us, mob attacking us. Now it has gone to the level of rape and murder. So this cannot be accepted, and we want a Central Protection Act to be implemented as soon as possible.
Doctors protesting along with common citizens across the country. Now, the Election Commission has announced dates for the assembly elections in Jammu and Kashmir and Haryana, while J&K will vote across 3 phases. All seats in Haryana will go to the polls in a single phase on the 1st of October. Ishan Vani reports from Srinagar on the assembly elections, which is set to take place in J&K after a decade.
The Election Commission of India has today announced 3-phase poll in Jammu and Kashmir. The last time assembly polls were held in J&K were in 2014 when the BJP and PDP came to power. But in 2018, the government collapsed and then it was the governor's rule, and later on in 2019, J&K was downgraded to a union territory and Ladakh was separated from it. This will be the first polls without Ladakh being part of Jammu and Kashmir, which has been made a separate union territory. And this will be the first polls of Jammu and Kashmir as union territory. There is a lot of excitement among the cadre of regional political parties, while the BJP and every political party have been demanding elections to take place. There was a Supreme Court deadline which said that elections should be held in the month of September, and following that, the Election Commission went ahead, visited Kashmir and got input from security agencies and also the district administration regarding the holding of election. There have been attacks, but the Election Commission has said that they won't be deterred by all these what's happening in Jammu, be it attacks or any other issues that is transpiring there. But 3/4 election where parts of South Kashmir, Jammu and also North Kashmir and Central Kashmir will go to polls will be very quick, and political parties will now start gearing up. Now in these elections, National Conference hasn't decided whether they will go with Congress as part of India Alliance as a group, but they will hold for the deliberations. Former Chief Minister Umar Abdullah is still yet to decide whether he will be the Chief Ministerial face of the party. The PDP's Mehbooba Mufti had earlier said that she wouldn't be contesting any polls. Now it will be interesting to see that what kind of contest unfolds on the ground, because people have been demanding for a very long time an election, and the sort of results that we had seen in terms of the number of people who had come to cast their votes in Lok Sabha elections, that had actually rejuvenated the Election Commission, and that's why that was one of the reasons that election have been now called in Jammu and Kashmir. With Bashir Lone, Srinagar, Ishan Vani for CNBC-TV18.
Well, Jammu and Kashmir heading to the polls for the first time in a decade. Up for a break, but next, complaints over the food served in trains surging 500% in FY24, but only 3 contractors punished, reveals RTI data from the IRCTC. That and more when we return. And you can catch all of CNBC-TV18's news and updates on Facebook, X, Threads, Instagram and JioCinema. Well, the other headlines that we're tracking tonight: Nobel laureate Muhammad Yunus, the head of the interim government in Bangladesh, dialed Prime Minister Modi today. In a tweet, the Prime Minister said he received a phone call from Yunus and reiterated India's support for a democratic, peaceful and stable Bangladesh. The Prime Minister also said that Yunus assured protection, safety and security of Hindus and all minorities in Bangladesh. The World Health Organization has declared Mpox, an illness caused by the monkeypox virus, a global health emergency. This after cases have been rising across more than 100 countries. Sweden announced that a person has been diagnosed with the virus. Pakistan's health ministry has also confirmed its first case after a 34-year-old man tested positive for the virus. Now, the Indian Railways has witnessed a 500% rise in food quality and hygiene-related complaints between March 2022 and Feb of 2024. This, according to the IRCTC's response to a right-to-information query filed by CNBC-TV18. Dhananjay Khatri joins us now with what the data reveals. Dhananjay.
In the last 3 years, nearly 13,000 complaints have been filed by passengers over the food served in Indian Railways. The last financial year saw nearly 7,000 complaints, which is a whopping 500% jump compared to FY22. But despite the rise in complaints from passengers, only 3 food contractors have faced repercussions. CNBC-TV18 filed a request under the RTI with IRCTC, which is in charge of catering along with ticketing. We asked IRCTC how many instances of rats, cockroaches or other insects were found in food items served to passengers. IRCTC did not provide a specific answer, but provided with the number of instances where passengers complained about the quality or hygiene of the food product. In FY22, IRCTC got total of 1,192 complaints, which rose to 4,776 in FY23. And in FY24, the number of complaints received was 6,948. So all in all, 12,916 complaints were registered in just 3 years alone. Even premium trains like Duronto, Rajdhani, Shatabdi saw a sharp surge in complaints over food quality. In FY23, the premium trains saw 2,812 complaints, which rose to 4,152 in FY24, which is an increase of 48%. Vande Bharat trains received 123 complaints in the last financial year alone. Express and mail trains, which account for bulk of passenger transit in India, saw 47% rise in complaints over the quality and hygiene of food items served to the passengers, according to RTI response shared to CNBC-TV18. So what action has the railways taken so far? Well, 3 contracts have been cancelled and 68 show cause notices have been issued in the last 3 years alone. Let me put this in context. Even after facing nearly 13,000 complaints over food quality served to passengers in the last 3 years, only 3 contracts have been cancelled. Quality concerns over food served in train is not a new issue. In 2017, a CAG audit report revealed that the caterers for Indian Railways have consistently failed to protect the food quality served to passengers from flies, insects, dust, rats and cockroaches. A parliamentary panel report tabled this year said that the lapses identified in the current system pose a challenge not only to the passengers' experience but also to the overall reputation of the Indian Railways. We asked IRCTC to respond over the rising complaints over the food quality, and they have not done so yet.
Dhananjay Khatri reporting there. Now, the Indian Space Research Organisation, or ISRO, successfully launched its 3rd development flight of the Small Satellite Launch Vehicle, or SSLV-D3. The vehicle was carrying an Earth observation satellite. The successful launch means that ISRO's smallest rocket is now fully operational for future commercial space launches. The cost-effective rocket can carry payloads of up to 500 kilos into low Earth orbit. Well, with that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of India Business Hour. Thanks very much for watching. It has been quite the week. Markets finally closing strong, and we will return with all the news on Monday. Till then, goodbye. Thanks for watching.